Johnny Carson caught these celebrities lying on live TV. For 30 years, Johnny Carson served as America's late-night confidant, welcoming over 22,000 celebrities to The Tonight Show couch. With his Midwestern charm and disarming interview style, Carson created an atmosphere where stars felt comfortable enough to let their guard down, sometimes revealing more than they intended. What made Carson a legendary interviewer wasn't just his ability to make guests feel at ease, but his remarkable talent for detecting when someone wasn't being entirely truthful. His reactions to celebrity fabrications became a subtle art form. The raised eyebrow, the knowing smile, the perfectly timed question that exposed the contradiction without explicitly calling the guest a liar. Johnny had an incredible radar for insincerity, revealed a former Tonight Show producer who worked with Carson for over a decade. He could sense when someone was spinning a tale, exaggerating their importance, or trying to rewrite their history. But what made him unique was how he handled those moments, with just enough pushback to let the audience know he wasn't buying it, but never enough to humiliate the guest. Today we're exploring 8 fascinating moments when Carson's finely tuned lie detector was activated on live television, when Hollywood's carefully crafted narratives collided with Johnny's gentle but persistent commitment to reality. These revealing exchanges, some playful and others more uncomfortable, offer a glimpse into Carson's masterful interview technique and the complex dance between honesty and image in the entertainment world. But first, let's begin with a Hollywood legend whose attempt to shave years off his age ran into an unexpected mathematical problem when Carson's casual question revealed the truth hiding in plain sight.
How old were you when you first came out?
I was 20, I'm 47 and a half now. I was 20.
Wait a minute, you sound like a kid when a grown man says, I'm 47 and a half. I never heard that before.
Number 1, Tony Curtis, The Age Lie. Tony Curtis had established himself as one of Hollywood's most enduring leading men, transitioning from 1950s heartthrob to respected dramatic actor with classics like Some Like It Hot and The Defiant Ones. By the time he appeared on The Tonight Show in the late 1970s, Curtis was still striking and youthful looking, qualities he apparently sought to enhance by claiming to be significantly younger than his actual age. Curtis was part of that old Hollywood system where the studios regularly shaved years off actors' ages, explained a Tonight Show writer who worked during this period. The difference was that most stars stopped maintaining those fictions once they reached a certain point in their careers. Tony never did. He just kept pushing the birth year forward. The truth emerged during what began as a casual conversation about World War II. Curtis was sharing an anecdote about his naval service during the war when Carson, ever attentive to details, asked a seemingly innocent follow-up question about how old Curtis had been at the time. The actor gave an age that would have made him a young teenager during his military service, a mathematical impossibility given the dates he'd just discussed. You could see Johnny's mental calculator working, recalled a camera operator who was focused on Carson during the exchange. He got this little twinkle in his eye, not mean-spirited, but definitely amused, and asked, "Wait, how old were you again?" Curtis immediately started stammering, trying to recalculate on the fly. What made the moment particularly revealing wasn't just Curtis's evident discomfort, but Carson's handling of the situation. Rather than directly calling out the discrepancy, he simply let the mathematical impossibility hang in the air with a gentle smile, allowing the audience to draw their own conclusions while giving Curtis an opportunity to move past the awkward moment. Johnny never said the word lie. That wasn't his style, noted a director who worked on the show. He just created a moment of clarity where the truth became obvious. The audience caught it immediately. You could hear this collective chuckle as people did the math themselves. The exchange illustrated a fundamental aspect of Carson's interview technique, his ability to reveal inconsistencies without creating confrontation. Unlike modern interviewers who might directly challenge a guest's claims, Carson preferred to let the truth emerge organically through conversation, maintaining the show's convivial atmosphere, even as he subtly exposed celebrity fabrications. After the show, Johnny mentioned the moment to a couple of us, remembered a producer. He wasn't judgmental about it, he just found it amusing how some stars clung to these fictions that were so easily disproven. He said something like, "Tony should know better than to talk about the war if he wants to keep pretending he's 8 years younger." The incident became a textbook example of Carson's interviewing philosophy, sharp enough to spot the lie, gentle enough to let the guest save face, and transparent enough to let the audience in on the game, all while maintaining the good-natured tone that defined The Tonight Show under his stewardship.
Me and my husband goes back to Germany. First of all, I'm Hungarian.
Number 2. Zsa Zsa Gabor, fake royalty claims. Zsa Zsa Gabor built a remarkable career less on acting talent than on an outsized personality and carefully cultivated image of European sophistication and aristocratic connections. Chief among her self-mythologizing claims was her frequent assertion of Hungarian royal lineage, a fabrication that she maintained throughout her public life and repeatedly mentioned during her numerous Tonight Show appearances. Zsa Zsa was the quintessential celebrity famous for being famous, long before that became common, explained a talent coordinator who worked on several of Gabor's Tonight Show visits. Her whole persona was built on this European glamour and nobility connection. The problem was, none of the royal claims were true, and Johnny knew it. During one particularly memorable appearance in the 1970s, Gabor once again referred to herself as Hungarian royalty, embellishing the claim with elaborate details about her family's supposed noble status. Carson, who had heard these assertions many times before, responded with a perfectly calibrated question that managed to challenge the fabrication while maintaining the show's light-hearted atmosphere. "Is that a real title or just the Hollywood kind?" Carson asked with his characteristic half-smile. The question, delivered with friendly curiosity rather than confrontational skepticism, nevertheless cut straight to the heart of Gabor's long-standing fabrication. "The audience knew exactly what Johnny was doing," recalled a director who worked on the show. "They burst into laughter because the question so perfectly captured what everyone knew, that Zsa Zsa's royalty was a Hollywood invention. But he asked it in such a charming way that she couldn't take offense." Gabor, ever the professional, parried the question with a theatrical wave of her hand and a vague response about European nobility being different from American understandings, neither confirming nor denying Carson's gentle skepticism. The exchange created a moment of shared understanding between Carson and his audience, while allowing Gabor to maintain her carefully constructed persona. Backstage, Johnny would roll his eyes every time she told that story, revealed a Tonight Show staff writer. It wasn't that he disliked Zsa Zsa, he actually enjoyed her as a guest, but he had this fundamental commitment to reality that made the constant royal claims mildly irritating to him. He once said, "If she's Hungarian royalty, I'm the king of Nebraska." What made the exchange particularly interesting was how it illustrated Carson's approach to handling recurring fabrications from regular guests. Rather than ignoring the false claims or confronting them directly, he developed a repertoire of gentle, knowing responses that acknowledged the fiction without embarrassing the guest, a technique that satisfied his commitment to truth while maintaining the show's hospitable environment. "Johnny had different levels of tolerance for different kinds of lies," explained a longtime producer. "He had very little patience for guests who tried to rewrite their personal histories in ways that hurt others or misrepresented important events. But the kind of harmless self-mythologizing that someone like Zsa Zsa engaged in, he treated that more as entertainment worthy of a gentle poke rather than a serious challenge." The Gabor exchanges became something of a running inside joke for regular Tonight Show viewers, a recurring dance between a host who valued authenticity and a guest whose entire career was built on fabulous fabrication, creating a dynamic that was both entertaining and subtly revealing of both personalities. Number 3. Truman Capote, falsified sobriety. Truman Capote had been a favorite Tonight Show guest throughout the 1960s and early 1970s, his literary brilliance and gossipy stories about the rich and famous making him reliable entertainment. But as Capote's struggles with substance abuse intensified in the late 1970s, his appearances became increasingly unpredictable and problematic, culminating in one particularly disturbing episode that revealed the dark side of celebrity fabrication. Capote arrived for his scheduled appearance in terrible shape, remembered a production assistant who was working that night. He was clearly intoxicated, slurring his words, unsteady on his feet. There were serious discussions backstage about whether to cancel the segment entirely. The author's publicist, however, insisted that Capote was simply tired from his book tour and would be fine once on air. When Carson directly asked if Capote was feeling all right, the author claimed to be completely sober, attributing his affected speech to exhaustion. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable segments in the show's history. Johnny knew immediately that Capote was lying about being sober, noted a director who was in the control room that night. Carson had encountered enough intoxicated guests over the years to recognize the signs. You could see a flash of disappointment cross his face when Capote claimed to be sober. Not anger, but a kind of sadness that this brilliant man he respected was in such denial. As the interview progressed, Capote's responses became increasingly incoherent. He would start answers that dissolved into unintelligible mumbling, lose his train of thought mid-sentence, and at several points appeared to momentarily lose awareness of where he was. Carson, drawing on decades of experience, tried various techniques to salvage the segment, but the situation deteriorated rapidly. Carson had this remarkable ability to rescue floundering interviews, explained a writer who witnessed the appearance. He could usually find some angle to make even the most difficult guest presentable. But Capote had gone beyond the point where even Johnny's skills could compensate. It was genuinely sad to watch. After a particularly incomprehensible response from Capote, Carson made the rare decision to cut the segment short, going to commercial break earlier than planned. When the show returned, Capote had been escorted off stage, and Carson moved on to the next segment with no explanation to the audience. The aftermath was unprecedented, recalled an NBC executive who dealt with the fallout. No press photos were issued from the appearance, and the segment was effectively buried. Capote's publicist later privately admitted to the production team that he had indeed been intoxicated, despite the claims to the contrary. What distinguished this incident from other celebrity fabrications on The Tonight Show was the serious nature of the lie. This wasn't harmless age vanity or self-aggrandizing claims of importance. It was denial of a severe substance abuse problem that was visibly affecting Capote's health and career. Carson's response reflected this gravity. Johnny took a much harder line on this kind of deception, noted a producer who spoke with Carson after the incident. He found it genuinely troubling rather than amusing. He told several of us, that wasn't just uncomfortable television, it was watching someone destroy themselves while denying there's a problem. He made it clear that Capote wouldn't be invited back until he got help. The incident illustrated an important boundary in Carson's otherwise tolerant approach to celebrity fabrications. When lies crossed from harmless vanity or image building into enabling destructive behavior, his gentle humor gave way to genuine concern and more consequential responses. Number 4. Robert Blake. I've never yelled at a crew member. Robert Blake had built a successful career, playing intense, often volatile characters, most notably in the popular television series Beretta. His reputation in Hollywood for being difficult on set was well established by the time he appeared on The Tonight Show in the late 1970s. During his interview with Carson, the conversation turned to this reputation, prompting Blake to offer a vigorous defense of his professional conduct. I've never yelled at a crew member, Blake insisted with evident passion. That's just Hollywood gossip. I'm intense about the work, sure, but I respect the people I work with. Anyone who says otherwise is spreading lies. Carson's reaction to this claim became an instant classic among Tonight Show staff, a perfect example of his ability to communicate volumes without saying a word. Rather than directly contradicting Blake's assertion, Carson simply made a facial expression that longtime viewers immediately recognized as his skepticism look. Raised eyebrows, slight tilt of the head, and the ghost of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. That expression was pure Carson gold, recalled a camera operator who captured the moment. He didn't need to say anything. His face did all the work, and the audience got it immediately. There was this wave of knowing laughter, because everyone understood exactly what Johnny was conveying without a single word. What made Carson's reaction particularly powerful was the context behind it. According to multiple staff members, Blake had arrived at the studio earlier that day and had indeed been abrasive with Tonight Show crew members, creating tension backstage hours before his on-air claim of never engaging in such behavior. Johnny made a face because he knew Blake had been barking at a stage guy literally an hour before the interview, explained a stage manager who witnessed both the backstage behavior and Carson's reaction. It wasn't just Hollywood gossip, it was behavior Carson had indirectly observed in his own studio that very day. After the show, Carson reportedly commented on the irony to Ed McMahon, saying he was barking at the stage guy an hour ago. This observation, shared as a private aside rather than a public call-out, exemplified Carson's approach to handling celebrity fabrications, noting the contradiction without creating an on-air confrontation that would have disrupted the show's atmosphere. Multiple Tonight Show crew confirmed this behavior over the years, noted a producer who worked on several of Blake's appearances. It wasn't a one-time thing, it was a pattern. Johnny was particularly sensitive to how guests treated his crew. He might let vanity or self-promotion slide with a gentle joke, but disrespect towards staff bothered him on a deeper level. What made the moment especially significant was how it demonstrated Carson's loyalty to his team. While he would rarely embarrass a guest on air, his subtle reaction to Blake's claim sent a clear message that he was aware of how the actor had treated Tonight Show staff and didn't accept the fabricated version of events. Johnny believed in keeping the show entertaining and light, but he also believed in standing up for his people, explained a longtime associate. That facial expression was his way of doing both, letting the audience know he wasn't buying Blake's claim while maintaining enough plausible deniability that the interview could continue without confrontation. The Blake incident became a textbook example of Carson's interviewing philosophy, finding the perfect balance between entertainment and authenticity, between politeness to guests and loyalty to truth. It was, as one staff member put it, Johnny at his most Johnny, saying everything while technically saying nothing at all.
Personality all over the world. She's about to start a summer concert tour and is starring in a new movie. Not starting. I guess she's finished it, right? That would mean it's not starting. It's over. It's called Who's That Girl?, which will be out in August. Would you welcome Madonna?
Number 5. Madonna. I wasn't trying to shock anyone. By 1987, Madonna had established herself as music's premier provocateur, with controversial videos, boundary-pushing performances, and a carefully crafted image built around sexual liberation and religious subversion. When she appeared on The Tonight Show that year, her segment quickly became infamous for its sexual innuendos and provocative comments that pushed the boundaries of what was acceptable on network television at that time. After Carson gently suggested that some of her remarks seemed designed to shock the audience, Madonna offered a disingenuous denial that triggered one of Carson's most memorably dry responses. I wasn't trying to shock anyone, she claimed, with an innocence that contradicted her entire public persona and the content of the preceding interview. Then you must do that in church too, Carson replied with perfect deadpan delivery, his raised eyebrow and knowing smile making it abundantly clear he wasn't buying her innocent act for a second. The audience erupted, remembered a director who was in the control booth that night. It was classic Carson, calling out the obvious fabrication without directly accusing her of lying. He used humor to point out the absurdity of her claim while maintaining the show's light tone. What made the exchange particularly revealing was Madonna's reaction to being so deftly countered. Used to controlling her narrative and image, she seemed momentarily taken aback by Carson's ability to cut through her practiced persona with a single quip. For a brief moment, the carefully constructed Madonna image faltered as the real person behind it registered genuine surprise. You could tell she wasn't used to being called on her fabrications, even in Johnny's gentle way, noted a camera operator who was focused on Madonna during the exchange. Most interviewers either took her provocations at face value or expressed shock, exactly the reaction she was seeking. Carson did neither. He just highlighted the obvious contradiction with humor, which was much more effective than either pearl-clutching or playing along. The aftermath of the appearance proved that Carson hadn't appreciated Madonna's disingenuous approach. While never officially banned from the show, Madonna was notably absent from The Tonight Show guest list for the remainder of Carson's tenure, a clear indication that her performance hadn't met his standards for authentic engagement. He clearly didn't buy it, and she was never invited back, confirmed a talent coordinator who worked on the show during this period. Johnny didn't mind controversial or edgy guests. He had plenty over the years. What he disliked was the false innocence afterward, the pretending that deliberate provocation was accidental or misunderstood. What distinguished Carson's handling of Madonna's fabrication from some of his responses to other celebrity lies was the slightly sharper edge to his humor. While still maintaining his professional demeanor, his response carried a more pointed skepticism than his typically gentle approach, suggesting a particular distaste for what he perceived as calculated inauthenticity packaged as spontaneity. Johnny had different categories of celebrity dishonesty in his mind, explained a producer who worked closely with Carson. Age vanity, exaggerated achievements, embellished anecdotes, these were all part of the showbiz game that he handled with gentle humor. But pretending that deliberately provocative behavior was innocent or misunderstood, that struck him as a more cynical kind of manipulation that deserved a more direct response. The Madonna incident became a notable example of Carson's commitment to authenticity within the inherently artificial context of television entertainment. His belief that while performance was expected and accepted, there should be an unspoken honesty about the nature of that performance rather than a disingenuous denial of its intent. Number 6. Burt Reynolds. This is all off the cuff. Burt Reynolds was one of Carson's favorite recurring guests, their natural chemistry and shared sense of humor creating memorable television moments throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Their relationship evolved to include elaborate practical jokes and staged pranks that delighted audiences. During one particularly famous appearance, Reynolds initiated what appeared to be a spontaneous prank war, culminating in him hitting Carson with a substantial amount of shaving cream. When Carson, covered in foam but laughing, asked if this had been planned, Reynolds insisted, "This is all off the cuff, totally spontaneous." It was a claim that Carson immediately and playfully exposed as false by reaching into his desk drawer and pulling out a note card with the evening's rundown. "Then what's this say?" Carson asked, holding up the card for the cameras. "Burt hits Johnny with shaving cream." The audience erupted in laughter as Reynolds grinned, caught in a harmless but obvious fabrication about the supposedly impromptu nature of their antics. "It was all in good fun, but it was a lie," noted a segment producer who had helped coordinate the prank beforehand. They had absolutely planned the whole sequence in advance, down to exactly when and how the shaving cream would appear. Johnny wasn't actually surprised by the prank itself. He was in on it, but he enjoyed the meta-comedy of pretending to expose Burt's claim of spontaneity. What made this incident different from other celebrity fabrications on the show was its entirely playful nature. Neither Carson nor Reynolds expected the audience to actually believe the pranks were unplanned. The humor came precisely from the theatrical exposure of this obvious fiction, creating another layer of entertainment for viewers. This was a different kind of lie, more of a performance convention than actual deception, explained a writer who worked on several Reynolds appearances. It was like when a magician says, "This is an ordinary hat," before pulling out a rabbit. No one actually believes it's just an ordinary hat. The claim is part of the performance. Carson's exposing of Reynolds' lie was itself a scripted moment, part of the elaborate comedic dance they had developed over years of appearances together. The exposure wasn't meant to embarrass Reynolds, but to extend the comedy by adding another layer to their performance. The gotcha moment was as carefully planned as the prank itself. "Johnny and Burt had this perfect comedy chemistry," recalled a director who worked on many of their segments. "They understood exactly how to play off each other, including how to create these moments of exposed deception that were really just another beat in their comedy routine. It was like watching two jazz musicians who could anticipate each other's improvisations." The Reynolds incidents represented a unique category in Carson's handling of celebrity fabrications, the mutually acknowledged performance lie, where the pretense of spontaneity was itself part of the entertainment. Unlike other instances where Carson gently exposed actual attempts at deception, these moments with Reynolds were collaborative comedy creations where the lie and its exposure were both part of the planned performance. Those segments with Burt were Carson's version of scripted reality TV before that concept existed, observed a longtime producer. Everyone, Johnny, Burt, and the audience, understood the game. The supposed spontaneity and its subsequent exposure were both part of the entertainment. It was a sophisticated form of play acting that acknowledged the audience's intelligence rather than trying to genuinely fool anyone. The Reynolds pranks illustrated Carson's versatility as an interviewer and entertainer, his ability to incorporate multiple levels of performance and meta-commentary while maintaining the show's signature warmth and accessibility. They also highlighted his understanding that different types of untruths served different functions in the entertainment context, requiring different handling to create the most satisfying experience for viewers.
Came on the stage, picked up a phone like this, and supposedly talked to my mother.
Number 7. George Jessel. Everyone loves my material. George Jessel represented an earlier era of entertainment, a vaudeville performer and early film personality whose comedy style had been formed in the 1920s and 1930s. By the time he appeared on The Tonight Show in the early 1970s, His approach to humor had become jarringly outdated, particularly regarding racial and ethnic material that mainstream entertainment had largely abandoned as sensibilities evolved. During his appearance, Jessel told a joke with racially offensive content that created uncomfortable silence in the studio. When Carson, visibly displeased, noted the audience's reaction, Jessel doubled down with a fabrication that exposed the generation gap in entertainment. "Everyone loves my material. People expect it from me." Carson cut to commercial early, recalled a director who was working that night. "It was one of the rare times you saw genuine displeasure from Johnny on air. Not anger, he was too professional for that, but a clear, unmistakable disapproval that even the most casual viewer could detect." What made Jessel's fabrication particularly jarring wasn't just the offensive nature of his material, but his evident inability to recognize how dramatically entertainment standards had changed. His claim that everyone loves content that had clearly made the studio audience uncomfortable revealed a performer who had failed to evolve with the times or acknowledge shifting cultural norms. Staff said Carson privately called it disgusting, revealed a production assistant who overheard Carson's backstage comments. He told his producer, "That's not what this show is about." Johnny had strong opinions about what was appropriate for his program, and Jessel had crossed a clear line. Unlike some of Carson's other responses to celebrity fabrications, his reaction to Jessel's false claim about audience reception wasn't humorous or gently mocking. It was a rare moment of visible disapproval from television's most controlled personality, a break from his typical affability that signaled to viewers the seriousness with which he viewed the situation. The fallout ensured he was not invited back, noted a talent coordinator from that period. Carson rarely banned guests outright. He preferred to let bookings naturally fade rather than making dramatic pronouncements. But when someone violated his standards as clearly as Jessel had, they simply disappeared from the guest rotation permanently. What distinguished this incident from other celebrity fabrications on the show was how it revealed Carson's ethical boundaries. While he could be indulgent of harmless vanity or self-promotion, he had no tolerance for fabrications that served to justify content he considered genuinely offensive or harmful. In such cases, his typical gentle humor gave way to a more direct, if still professional, rejection. Johnny was a product of his time in many ways, but he was also someone who believed entertainment should evolve, explained a writer who worked on the show during this period. He had no patience for performers who clung to outdated, offensive material while falsely claiming universal approval for it. That kind of self-deception struck him as particularly worthy of rejection. The Jessel incident became a reference point for Tonight Show staff, an example of where Carson drew the line between acceptable showbiz fabrications and unacceptable ones. It revealed that beneath Carson's genial television persona was a man with clear moral boundaries and a willingness to enforce them, even at the cost of smooth entertainment.
Open crazy.
Didn't you?
What?
Had a few drips.
A few drips. We're going to do this right away? Let me do this. We're going to come back and talk.
Number 8, Chuck Berry, I'm Happy to Wait. Chuck Berry, one of rock and roll's founding fathers, was scheduled to perform on The Tonight Show in the late 1970s. When earlier segments ran long, pushing Berry's performance later than planned, a production assistant was sent to inform him of the delay and gauge his reaction. Berry's response, "I'm totally fine waiting," proved to be one of the most consequential fabrications ever delivered backstage at the show. Carson smiled when he heard Berry was okay with the delay, remembered a producer who was working that night. He had dealt with temperamental musicians before and was relieved to hear Berry was being accommodating, but that relief didn't last long. Contrary to his stated acceptance of the schedule change, Berry was actually furious about the delay. His pleasant response to the production assistant was a complete fabrication, masking his growing anger at what he perceived as disrespect. As the show continued, Berry's rage apparently intensified backstage until he reached a breaking point. Berry stormed off mid-show and was replaced with a rerun, revealed a stage manager who witnessed the incident. One minute he was in the green room supposedly totally fine with waiting. The next minute he was gone, left the building entirely without a word to anyone. It created a massive problem for the production team, who suddenly had to fill his performance slot with no warning. Carson, ever the professional, handled the unexpected departure smoothly on air, making no mention of Berry's abrupt exit. But backstage, according to multiple staff accounts, he was both surprised and amused by the dramatic contrast between Berry's claimed patience and his actual behavior. The fake all-good smile became a Tonight Show legend, noted a writer who was present that night. Johnny referenced it for years afterward Whenever guests claimed to be fine with production changes, he'd say, "Are you really okay with that? Or is this a Chuck Berry okay?" It became shorthand among the staff for someone saying one thing while clearly feeling another. What made Berry's fabrication particularly consequential was its direct impact on the show's production. Unlike celebrity lies about age or achievements that affected only the guest's image, Berry's false claim of patience, followed by his unannounced departure, created a genuine logistical crisis for the program, forcing the production team to scramble for replacement content with no preparation. Carson had a special distaste for dishonesty that affected the show's operation, explained a longtime producer. Vanity, self-promotion, exaggerated stories, he viewed these as part of the showbiz game, but lying about something that directly impacted the program's ability to function properly, that crossed a line for him. The incident illustrated an important aspect of Carson's approach to celebrity fabrications. Context mattered. The same lie, "I'm fine with waiting," might have been inconsequential in a different situation, but because it directly affected the show's production and was immediately followed by actions that contradicted it entirely, it earned a place in Tonight Show lore as one of the most problematic celebrity deceptions the program ever encountered. "Johnny had a particular appreciation for the irony of it," recalled a staff member. He once joked, "If Berry had just said he was angry, we could have adjusted the schedule to accommodate him." It was the false "I'm fine" followed by the vanishing act that created the problem. Johnny valued honesty not just as a moral principle, but as a practical necessity for running a complex television production. The Berry incident became a case study in Carson's understanding of the different types of celebrity fabrications and their varying impacts. It demonstrated his recognition that while some lies were merely part of the entertainment world's image-making machinery, others had real-world consequences that affected dozens of professionals trying to create a television program under the pressure of live broadcast constraints.